Welcome back to the Unbox Some Fun cast. It's 2 weeks since we were at GAMA, and clearly we're still tired.
Yep.
This is the podcast about being on the front lines of the games industry at Games Unlimited, a friendly local game store here in Pittsburgh. And this episode, we want to talk about GAMA Expo. It ended about 2 weeks ago. I am one of your hosts, Kylie, the owner of Games Unlimited. I'm joined as always by
Candra, I'm one of the managers here at Games Unlimited.
Excellent. You do look a little more awake than last time we recorded, which was before GAMA Expo.
Yeah, I mean, this year was interesting. This was my third GAMA Expo in a row, and ordinarily we expect to have kind of a slow period after the holidays, a bit of a come down, and then we take that time to restock the shelves, to make sure staff is feeling all right post holidays, and also to ramp ourselves up, get ready for GAMA. We make sure scheduling is on point. We make sure we know what we are trying to do at GAMA ourselves, get all our ducks in a row. But this year, we did not so much have that fallow period following the holidays. Things just kept rolling right along at a pretty swift clip, and we just had to keep up.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we talked about all of the last episode. We did an episode recapping 2025, and we talked about how it's just kept going. I asked most of the retailers that I saw at GAMA what was their experience of 2025 like, and what was the first couple of months of 2026 like. And almost universally, it was similar to ours. People were very worried about 2025 with all of the stuff going on. But it ended up being a banner year for most of the retailers I talked to. And 2026, starting off, we talked about us being up 25% in January. And we saw that universally. And a lot of other retailers thought that was on the back of some very high profile CCG releases, big CCG releases, some Pokemon stuff. But we're not a CCG store. We saw it as well. So it seemed like universally people were wanting to go buy games, have that face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, well, and that's something I've been hearing more and more from people in the store. Obviously, we take for granted that people who are walking into a tabletop gaming store want tabletop games and likely want them at least in part because of the fun you have face to face with other human beings. But what I have found striking, and this is, no data, I haven't kept track of how many customers, what percentage of our foot traffic have talked to me about this, but it has been striking to me how many people have brought up themselves with no prompting from me in conversation that they're here specifically because they are sick of screens.
I wonder if that's impacted our sales of app-assisted games. Though, to be honest, I can't think of any high-profile app-assisted games that have come out in the past year or more. I mean, Descent was the last big one. Yeah.
They seem to have peaked a bit. There have been examples of games that have an optional app, but it's usually just a scoring assist or something like that.
Yeah. So back to GAMA. Chandra, do you want to explain, for those who may not know, what GAMA is and what GAMA Expo is?
Sure. So GAMA includes every facet of the tabletop gaming industry, most importantly. We were there as retailers, along with plenty of other retailers from all over the place, across the country, but even from other countries as well. But it also includes the publishing side. It includes distributors, warehousers, the actual factory folks themselves, the places that a publisher would license to produce the individual components of their games, and designers.
Yep, designers. Let's also not forget about artists.
Artists,
right?
absolutely.
There's a creative category where designers, artists, media and events as well. So folks who do content creation, podcasts, who
YouTubers, TikTokers,
convention management, right? And those are all the reasons, because it includes so many parts of it. When the when the organization was founded, I want to say about 50 years ago now, it was created by publishers, by manufacturers. But as the industry has grown and been inclusive of all these facets, the decision was made just a couple of years ago, actually, to officially change the name to still GAMA, but GAMA does not stand for the Game Manufacturers Association.
Right. Yeah, I remember when that happened, I was not fully aware that they just went to, it's just Gamma now. But yeah, I remember when they made the mission statement broader. I think that was the right move. I mean, obviously, I don't have a ton of experience from before that, but I think it was the right move because this industry is extremely integrated on kind of an operations level. What we do here at the store really does depend so much on publishers and distributors and designers and so on down the line. And in a lot of ways, vice versa, which brings us back to our tagline, the front lines of the gaming industry. But that industry works in a lot of ways kind of hand in glove, not always as efficiently as we might like, but we do see a lot of cooperation and communication between the various levels.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about on the day to day, what facets of the industry do we as retailers interact with? Obviously, the end user. I think we call ourselves the front line of the games industry because I think more than any other part of the industry, we interact with the end user, the person who's going to ultimately be playing the game. That's our primary focus. But we also very regularly interact with largely the distributor side. We've
Mhm.
got to order our games from somewhere, and the vast majority of our games come from distributors who are sort of they call it the three-tier system. Publishers make games, they sell those games to a distributor who then warehouses everything and sells the games to the retailer who then sells it to the end consumer. So we interact with them a lot.
Mhm.
But increasingly, we are also getting to interact with the publishers directly.
Yes.
We have direct relationships with them. We purchase things direct from them, which is awesome because it allows us to talk to them and have that relationship. Because the distributor, yes, they have some interest in games. They're going to hype some games up, but they're not intimately involved in the creation of the games. So being able to talk to the publisher themselves.
Yeah.
So those are really, on the day-to-day, week-to-week
Yeah.
level, the parts of the industry we deal with.
Yeah, although I would also add that just as we are increasingly talking to publishers, we're increasingly talking to designers as well. A lot of independent designers have taken a go at being their own publishers.
Mhm.
Um, and there's also the point that a lot of designers, even if they have a publisher other than themselves, they want to do a lot of the legwork to get their games into stores and most importantly into people's hands and onto their tables. So individual designers are really kind of in a very old school way taking a lot more initiative these days.
Not to mention, as the industry has grown, which we've seen in the past 10 years, just how much it's grown, more and more people who are local, in our case, local to Pittsburgh, are getting into game design. So
Mhm.
they're coming to us because they see us as, hey, you know how this industry works. You know, what are some tips and tricks? Who should I contact? How do I get things published? And we don't know the answers to all of those things, but we have connections. And so we get to see a lot of projects, in their inchoate form. Many years ago, a customer of ours named Kevin Riley created originally a pirate themed deck building game with an interesting mechanism where you don't shuffle your deck.
Yeah.
And that eventually ended up becoming Aeon's End, a hugely popular
Yep.
deck building game.
Absolutely.
For a lot of people who don't know, GAMA also puts on Origins,
Yep.
which is a consumer show along the lines of Gen Con, PAX Unplugged. These shows that last several days that end users go to. They get to try out games, they get to meet designers, etc.
And Origins is one of the kind of legendary ones of those. I remember growing up, the big pilgrimages were Dragon Con, Gen Con, and Origins.
All of which still exist.
Yep.
Which is awesome.
Mhm.
But GAMA Expo is a trade show, so it is not open to the public. You have to have some relationship to the industry to get tickets. And most people are members of GAMA because you
Right.
get free tickets to the show if they're members of GAMA. So among other things, it's a space where we as retailers get to spend more time with some of those other tiers of the industry that we don't normally interact with as much.
And other retailers, vitally, other
Yes.
retailers.
Which is actually, I mean, that's an interesting thing right there. I didn't mention. We don't interact super regularly with other retailers. I mean, aside from I'll call another local game store here in Pittsburgh to see if they have a game that a customer is looking for, et cetera. But yeah, we get to interact with other retailers, and often in a way, I mean, I think most retail game store owners, well, the good ones, I will say, don't have a strong sense of competition
Right.
with their other local stores. We have a great relationship with them. But even if you do feel like you have that strong sense and you don't necessarily want to be sharing insider tips with your competitor down the street, when you go to a place like this, I can talk to a game store from Seattle. I can talk to a game store from Georgia. And we can share how things are different, how are the same, and share tips and not feel like we're, actually in competition with each other.
Right.
But we also get to talk to like artists.
Mm-hmm.
I spent some time with other media people, people who have podcasts and are content creators that I don't interact with as much. So just really a big smorgasbord of people in the industry.
Absolutely. That entails everything from a big, huge trade hall where designers and publishers and people from every layer of the industry are hawking their wares, so to speak, to seminars. There are, seminars given by publishers, by designers, by distributors, by individual people who just want to share what they've found to be best practices or useful, philosophical insights, or the seminars really run the gamut. They're very eclectic.
Yes, they are.
You've got the demo hall at night. You have private meetings happening all throughout. I mean, there's really anything you can imagine happening at a trade show happens at the GAMA Expo in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And let's get into some of that stuff, some of what we saw this year. But I will say, big plug, if you are in the industry in any capacity, especially if you're a retailer.
Yeah.
But if you're in the industry in any capacity and you have not been to GAMA Expo, you must go.
Yeah.
It is well worth your time.
Yep. I get asked a lot by independent creators and small publishers if they think it's worth their time, and I always tell them yes.
Yeah.
If you're looking to get a table and you're really small, just starting out, maybe one of the consumer-facing ones is a better initial bet. But when you're ready to start branching out, making connections, trying to get into stores or distribution or a bigger publishing contract, GAMA's invaluable.
Yeah. I was just counting on my fingers how many GAMA Expos I've been to. My first one was in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be 10. Actually went to GAMA Expo in 2020. It was it was right before the pandemic lockdown happened.
I remember the chaos of that. Yeah.
Yes. But though this wasn't my 10th, it was my 9th, because I actually skipped, I believe it was 2022 or variety of 2021. It was virtual. We had a virtual GAMA Expo. And 22, I think I was tired. I didn't want to do it. But yeah, that's a lot of years of going. And you're going to get so much out of your first year and so much out of your second year. And some people say, well, there's diminishing returns. That's going to depend a lot on how much networking you do.
Yeah.
Not for us. so many private meetings, so many people to talk to and learn stuff for. But
Yep. I wouldn't say diminishing returns. I definitely would say, this being my third year, I definitely saw I got a ton out of the first 2 years. The third year, I still got a lot out of it, but the character shifted.
yeah.
My mindset about it was completely different.
Yeah.
So it's nothing about the expo itself. It's that once you've done it for a few years running, I think the way you approach it matures.
So let's just go down maybe some highlights of either stuff you saw in the exhibit hall, or private meetings that we may have had.
Sure.
I'm going to lean this one off. The first actual private meeting I had was with Studio Woe, technically the name of the publisher. They make the Smelly Bones,
Oh yeah.
Baron Smelly Bones dice.
Infamous in our store.
Infamous, especially the long drive back I had to take. I first discovered these at PAX Unplugged in 2024, and I bought a case of this stuff and had to drive back with them in the car. But the owner of the company, the designer of these dice, his name is Brent. I met him at PAX Unplugged in 2024. He asked me some questions about coming to GAMA. I said, you should definitely come to GAMA, which he did in 2025. And I introduced him to a lot of retailers. But we sold out probably early, mid 2025. And I'm going to be honest, I thought that the company had folded. I hadn't heard anything from them. We didn't reach out to reorder this, not for any particular reason. The dice were successful, just we get backlogged of things to look into. And so I was very excited to see that, oh, yes, the Smelly Dice are going to be at GAMA. And I reached out to Brent, said, hey, let's have a meeting. And it was actually the reason I had thought they folded was the exact opposite. It wasn't that they failed. It was that they had what we sometimes call catastrophic success.
Yep.
This is a term I first heard in reference to Kickstarter. When a small publisher will do a Kickstarter for like raising $10,000 and they make $1 million, and they think this is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? The logistics of dealing with $1 million campaign and dealing with a $10,000 campaign are radically different, and literally companies have gone bankrupt because they're too successful.
Yeah. They couldn't keep up with the sudden jump in the demands placed on them.
And in a small way, this is kind of what happened with the Smelly Dice. Was the demand was so great. Brent had to learn how to outsource the production of them while keeping them as good as they are. Had to hire people, wasn't good on the communication side. This is why, I wasn't getting any emails saying, hey, we've got a new line coming out, do you need to reorder? Those things are important. It's important when we see this stuff. Don't get me wrong, 98% of emails we just ignore.
Yeah.
But, when I see an email, oh, right, that product that we love, we need to reorder that. But that stuff was slipping through the cracks. But let's just say they are back, bigger and better than ever. They've hired some staff, a new communications person, and we placed a huge order at Expo, and we're going to hopefully keep our stuff stocked.
Yeah, absolutely. They're genuinely a cool novelty item. A lot of novelty stuff comes and goes. I actually think these are like very high quality, which is the big thing about a lot of novelty stuff that makes them go away. And they actually put in a lot of work to make sure they maintain their scent long term. It's not just a quick passing thing. So kudos to them. They deserve the success. The scents are weirdly accurate. If you get a chance to check these things out, don't put your nose too close immediately.
Any interesting ones you saw, Chandra?
Yeah, a few. I tend to have my attention a lot on like indie creators of different sorts. And the GAMA has what's called the Horizons Fellowship, where they try to support in a variety of ways creators who are trying to get a foothold in the industry from diverse backgrounds. So we're talking LGBTQ plus creators. We are talking people of color, all sorts of backgrounds. Folks who can use a little bit of a leg up to get into the industry before they can really, hit the ground running. And the Horizons Fellowship gives them access to mentorship and a bunch of other resources. Well, I was taken, and I want to thank, I forget if it was Soul Muppet or Rowan Rook and Descartes. It was one of them, because a lot of these indie RPG publishers are real big on giving each other high fives. But one of them pointed us to one of the Horizon Fellowship folks, Faye Weaver, Goblin Door Games, if memory serves. brought out a really little, very poetic RPG called Before the Worms.
Mm.
That one really grabbed me. I bought a bunch of copies right then and there to bring back to the store, which is kind of uncommon. We place a lot of orders at the expo. We don't necessarily bring back a lot of physical copies right from then, but I did with that game. Um, that one, again, very poetic, very kind of cathartic kind of game about morality, about human interaction, and about the dark sides of those things. So definitely not going to be for everyone, not escapist fun, but a really great artistic creation, I think. Um,
That one was funny because I saw Goblin Door, and met Faye Weaver on my own. So
mhm,
often there's 4 of us that go to GAMA
yep.
Expo, and often Chandra and Dan B kinda roam the hall themselves. They are RPG experts, and I'll roam myself or sometimes with Dan M. But I always like to swing by the Horizons Fellowship booths and see
Yep.
things, and I saw that, I was like, "That's a really cool game." They, handed me a copy of Before the Worms, and I was like, "Okay, I wanna remember this, we'll talk about it." And then we get back from Gamma, and Chandra's like, "Oh, yeah, I bought a bunch of copies of that game
Yeah.
already."
Yeah. Um, yeah, I personally, not to put too much pressure on you, Faye, if you're listening, but I expect really great things out of Faye, just based on that one thing. It's a creative system, so I think it'll be interesting to watch what comes out of Goblin Door as far as actual game design goes. But also conceptually, that's the lifeblood of RPGs. Um, Even if you're just doing another old school dungeon crawler, hex crawler, there still has to be something that sets it apart. Otherwise, why is it there? Why is it on the marketplace? And to see these independent creators experimenting on the margins, that's how you get innovations that make their way into the sort of classic formats.
Yeah, yeah. Another publisher I had, a meeting with was Level 99.
Mhm.
Brad Talton, who designs one of my favorite fighting games. Well, it's technically the Exceed system. I know it from Guilty Gear, the board game.
Yep.
But this is someone I really wanted to talk to. There's a few layers to this. On a previous podcast last season, I talked about Yomi coming back, which is an
Yep.
all-time favorite fighting game, card game, Street Fighter in card game form.
Yep.
Um, and I talked about Yomi on the podcast. I had mentioned that I didn't think it was going to have much commercial success. It hadn't before, specifically meaning in the brick and mortar space.
Right.
Because we've tried selling it as much as I love it, top 10 game for me, but doesn't sell for whatever reason. And the designer of Yomi actually reached out to me, emailed and said, "Hey," his name's David Serlin. "Hey, uh, what are your thoughts on why doesn't it work well in the brick and mortar space?" And we had an email exchange. It was really fun to get to talk with him. Is also show my respect for how much I love the game. Um, but I had noticed that Level 99, that their system, the Exceed fighting game system, wasn't currently available wholesale. They do a lot of Kickstarters for stuff. Guilty Gear was I think a one-off because of the license.
Mm.
And so I was like, okay, Yomi's not doing well in brick and mortar, and Level 99 doesn't seem to be, pushing the Exceed system in brick and mortar. Is it a similar thing? I was curious what Brad's thoughts were on that. So it was cool to get a chance to talk with him. Then no, Exceed's not dead. Exceed's coming back this summer
Great.
in a hopefully brick and mortar friendly package. That's one of the harder things about something like this is there a lot of fight. It's a fighting game, and
Mhm.
often every individual fighter has its own deck of cards. Well, that gets really expensive, right? Yomi comes with 10 fighters in a box, and it's $100+.
Yep.
Or do you sell them in individual packs? How does this work? I'm
Yep.
not going to go into all the details of why it's difficult in the brick and mortar space, but Exceed's coming back in a couple of different 4-player or 4-fighter packs, and I'm excited about that. But the other thing that happens is, I sit down with some of these publishers to talk about a specific thing, but I also get to hear about other things, like a game that Level 99 publishes that was not on my radar, Dead by Daylight. It's based on a video game that I
Yep.
personally haven't played. Have you played it?
I've not played it, but I'm aware of it.
Yeah, yeah. I knew it was based on a video game. I hadn't heard much about it. I assumed it was a big 4-hour epic thing just from the looks of it. And Brad was like, "Nope, it's quick. It's an hour-long game, and it's basically it's Final Girl, but like one versus many.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, well, now that sounds interesting. So I ordered some of that, and I'm hoping to get that tried. And that's another thing that's great. We hear about some stuff that was just not on our radar when we do these things.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Also want to quickly plug, we were able to get a couple of different private meetings with Roll and Play Press. They are a small RPG accessory publisher, is what I want to call them. I can't think of a better term for them. Out of the UK. Most famously, they do One Shot Wonders, which is a book full of one shots that are statted for D&D 5e or whatever we're calling the current edition of D&D. Um, but really usable as inspiration and sort of drag and drop quick adventures for any kind of classic fantasy RPG. They've got a set of maps that go along with it that are really great as well. They also do a lot of RPG stationery, log books and journals and binders and all sorts of things like that for RPGs.
Wait,
Um,
so you're telling me they're not a one-shot wonder themselves?
they are not. They have plenty of things on the market. They're great though. I like it's all very high quality. It's all well designed. Um, but they've got some stuff in the works that I don't think I can talk about specifically right now, but that have me genuinely excited.
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
Um, and it's just cool to know of a company that we've been working with for a couple of years now, already really like their stuff, but to watch them pushing themselves, to watch them expanding their own creative boundaries a bit, and doing some interesting larger scale stuff. And that's a great thing about the expo too, is you get to run into people you already know, you already have a relationship with on one level or another, and watch them grow, watch them sort of, change around their positioning in the industry. Shout outs also to our friends at Soul Muppet, Rowan Rook and Descartes, and Critical Kit, all out of the UK. These are indie RPG publishers and designers who are always pushing the envelope. And it's really cool to see Critical Kit in particular publishing more and more of other people's work. So you've got a creator who started publishing himself and has branched out to publishing other creators and giving them a venue.
Yeah, reminds me of local here, Tyler Crumrine with
Yep,
Possible Worlds Games. Very
absolutely.
similar, publishing his own stuff. Now started publishing other people's things.
hmm
It's really cool. So, often we might think about as a retailer, you go to these shows to find new product, and we do. We found a
hmm
lot of new product, but often I don't want to use the term rediscover. We remember
Yeah.
some things because when we came back from Expo, as Chandra said, we placed some orders at the show, but I literally spent the next week, like my entire work week, was placing orders, going through the stuff we saw and placing orders. Literally, literally maxed out the credit card at one point. Got an email that's like, you're hitting your limit.
Yeah.
And I had to call them and be like, yeah, I'm going to need a bigger limit because I'm ordering a bunch of stuff. But some of that is actually publishers that we know and love, that we carry their stuff. But as we mentioned, we're doing so much, especially this year, as busy as we've been, stuff falls by the wayside, not intentionally. So a couple things. Pink Tiger.
hmm
I love Amy, the designer who does these amazing, just cute, but also like inspirational party games.
Mm.
You Think You Know Me. One of my favorites is, I can't remember the name of it now, but it's it's Flatter Me. It's a
Oh, yeah.
compliment war. It's basically war, but you are playing cards to compliment the opponent to
hmm
get rid of it's fantastic. But, you know, publishers often come, they have a show special. They're like, hey, if we order now, we're going to get, maybe a little extra, a few points off or some free shipping or something like that, or free games, whatever, just to incentivize you to order stuff. And I was like, oh, right, let's get an order in. I don't have Amy's new game. And I'm going through the list and realizing we didn't have any of Amy's games on the show.
Yeah.
Just like sold out over the holidays.
hmm
And it's like, what?
Yeah.
This is a huge oversight. So order everything.
hmm
And hopefully remember, again, this is where the email marketing publishers is important.
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
me seeing, oh, right, I'm going to check in a couple of months. Do I need to get more of Amy's games, etc.?
We might not read the email, but seeing the email come through in the inbox keeps you top of mind for us. That's our reminder to check back in on your stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is true even of games that we love. Van Ryder,
Mhm.
publisher of graphic novel adventures, which is super cool, choose your own adventure comic books. That's a simplistic way to put it, but
Yeah.
basically, as well as, my number 2 board game of all time, Final Girl. They were doing a deal. It's like, yes, let's stock up on Final Girl stuff, realizing, oh, we were probably only carrying at the time about a third of
Yeah.
the feature films.
Yep.
My bad.
Yeah.
But it's hard for me, for anyone to keep track of all that stuff. So like big order, get them all back in. And actually it gave me some content creation fodder. You're hearing it now first, folks, but I think I'm going to do a video series where I do basically movie reviews of all the games.
That's a cool
Of course, I
idea.
got to play each feature film again,
Yeah.
remind myself. It's going to be a lot of hard work on my part, but I'm willing to do it for you, the fans.
Yeah, and Van Ryder, just so you know, it's only number 2 because there's not an explicit Tolkien theme on it.
That's true. Ooh, now I'm thinking of is there some sort of crossover like Final Hobbit?
Oh, you know that there is. You know there is. Hobbits trying to rescue other hobbits from a Balrog or something like that, or ring wraiths.
Ooh, okay, if you're listening, Van Ryder, I know I'm sure the license is real easy to get. But.
Yeah.
How about the seminars? So you went to some seminars. So these are structured things. There's publishers literally give seminars talking about what they've got going on, but also peer-to-peer seminars.
Yeah.
Retailers giving seminars towards other retailers, publishers towards other publishers, and sometimes cross-tier. Anything you experienced, you sat through?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to broadly go over publisher seminars. These can be formatted a bit differently depending on who's giving them. Some of them are pretty much just, hey, we're going to read our catalog to you. Those are my least favorite. I can see your catalog anytime I want on your website or whatever. The ones that are really useful and can be genuinely interesting are the ones where they go, and Goodman Games, I think, is especially good about this. Ones in which the publishers walk you through not just their catalog, but also give you a bit of the reasoning behind their catalog, why a particular line does well, who it seems to do well with, what it brings to the table, literally and figuratively. Goodman Games, I point out for this because they're really good at talking about how their new stuff coming down the pipeline expands upon the core ideas of, say, Dungeon Crawl Classics or D&D 5th edition or whatever game the particular product is for. They, go into a little bit of the design philosophy sometimes, things like that. That is a lot more useful for me personally because that gets me thinking about the product as something unique, and it gets me interested as an individual, which is what's going to make me interested as someone running a game store. I want, just as we want to show our enthusiasm to our customers, I want publishers to show me their enthusiasm too.
Yeah. And I will, as I've thought about this a little bit, because I'm with you. I didn't go to any publisher seminars this year.
I noticed.
But yeah, I don't want you just reading your catalog because I've read your catalog. But I definitely have talked to retailers who they don't do that work ahead of time. So they are going to these seminars and being surprised.
Right.
I believe, I don't know if it was you or Dan M who mentioned to me that, they were in the Asmodee one.
That was me.
That was you. And they talked about Fate of the Fellowship, the Pandemic Lord of the Rings. And that was the only game that the audience seemed to have heard of.
Yeah. Yep.
Audience of retailers.
Yeah. Um, the rest of the audience mostly seemed to already be aware of the TCG accessories that Asmodee carries.
Which, I mean, don't get me wrong, you're going to lean into whatever the strengths are of your
Sure.
store. What I would say to retailers is it's still important to keep up on that catalog. GAMA should not be the only time of year that you are hearing about a publisher's plans
Yeah.
and what's coming down the pipe.
Yep.
Because a lot of stuff happens between GAMAs.
Yeah.
And GAMA, being in March or April, it's moving to April next year, that is 9 months before the holidays.
For sure.
You want to know what's coming out right before Q4.
And going back to the emails thing, let me tell you, our Asmodee rep, Josh, and I'm singling him out because we have a little more personal relationship with Josh, but he's really good about keeping us informed of what's going on so that we are not blindsided by stuff 2 months after it already came out.
Yeah.
That's the job of a rep. That's what they're there for. And it's genuinely helpful to have multiple avenues for hearing about these things.
Yeah. I mean, I got to toot our own horn a little bit. Like, I hear a lot of retailers getting excited about stuff 2 months after we were already bringing it in, excited about it, sold out of it.
Yep.
But I mean, we are not just on the front line of the games industry. In a lot of ways, we're on the cutting edge, both in the indie RPG space and the board game space. But that's our passion. That's what we want to do.
Yeah.
I know the stores are going to focus on other things. I gave a seminar this year. I've given seminars most years, and in fact, Chandra, you've given a seminar.
This is my first of 3 years in which I haven't. I gave a seminar at my very first GAMA.
Yeah. But this year I gave a seminar. I wasn't going to give a seminar this year for reasons we might get into later. But I had read this marketing book called Alchemy by Rory Sutherland, and it didn't teach me anything that we weren't already doing at Games Unlimited, but it gave me language for it. And I realized that is some of the language that I've tried to instill when I do seminars or talk to other retailers, and I didn't have words for it. And so I decided to give a seminar on that. Less of a process-oriented thing. Process seminars would be like, here's how we do used games. Here's how you find indie RPGs, that sort of thing.
Yep.
This was more big picture thoughts about how you run your store, think about your store, how you give your staff the freedom to try things and experiment. And I think it was very well received. It was super fun to give. I think it was very well received.
I had multiple people come up to me throughout the rest of the expo telling me to tell you that they really loved your seminar. So, yeah, I would say it was pretty well received.
Yeah. And, in case you're curious about it, stay tuned to the podcast because GAMA this year, some years and years past, they've recorded some of the seminars. There were no recordings this year, but I'm going to give the seminar on the podcast. Chandra hasn't even had the chance to see the seminar.
I've read the book, and of course, we've had conversations about it, but I'm curious to hear your kind of organized thoughts on it since you took so much time really putting down notes and putting that seminar together.
Yeah, so we'll do that on the pod. And then I did have the opportunity, I was asked to sit in on a panel of other content creators because, in case you don't know, we do a lot of stuff for social media, not just the podcast. We are content creators as well.
Much to my chagrin.
This guy is getting recognized in strange places.
Funerals.
I sat on a panel with some other content creators. The panel was about sort of building your brand. A lot of people in the room, whether they were retailers or publishers in their own right, or creatives, or just people who want to get into that part or get some tips. And it was really fun, especially, honestly, the fun part was just, I wanted to sit in the front row and listen to these well-established content creators. Dirty secret I'm going to put out there in the universe now. I try very hard not to, and I'm fairly successful at not scrolling on social media. I'm kind of a long-time caller, no-time listener. But there were content creators up there that I knew. I'd seen their stuff, and I got to meet and be introduced to some other content creators, and just listening to how other people do things,
Mm.
because it's such an interesting space. So that was fun. Now you got to go to a seminar given by a person so influential in the industry that we have a piece of furniture here at the store named after him.
That is true. Our cart of $10 and under used games is named James after James Ernest, the founder and most prolific designer of cheap ass games.
Inside joke here at the store.
Yeah. So James Ernest, if you're not familiar, and cheap ass games in particular, uh, especially back in the 90s and into the early 2000s, they famously were uh, genuinely good, well thought out games, board games, card games, etc., that were sold steeply discounted. Mr. Ernest would design a game that could be played using dice and pawns and coins and other things you would likely already have laying around your house that you could pillage from other board games and so forth. And so the game would come in a cheap paper envelope with the black and white title art pasted onto the front of it, and they would cost $5. And inside, you would open up this envelope and dump out whatever Xeroxed cardboard cutout board pieces or cards or whatever were necessary for the game. And the rule sheet would tell you what other components you would need to supply yourself. A six-sided die, a couple of pawns, whatever it was. And my friends and I played the hell out of cheap-ass games. We were spending all of our money on RPGs, but we still wanted filler games, board games, card games, party games. And we got those, a lot of them from cheap ass games, because I could buy my $25 Palladium Books RPG book. And then the last $5 I had left, hey, I'll throw in Biting Off Heads or Gimme the Brain or Lord of the Fries or, one of these. And take home 2 games instead of 1 for that $30 I'd been sitting on since my birthday. And we got so much gameplay out of these that it was actually a kind of a big deal for me to go to James Ernest's presentation. And he was talking about the aesthetics of randomness in game design, which I thought was an interesting phrase. And
That's random.
right. So most of his games very deliberately use randomness, whether it's card draws or dice rolls or what have you, alongside strategy. And he was going into what you get for randomness in a game design. And, he went over a number of places you can use randomness and a number of types of randomness you can use, and how and why you might do each one, which ones will increase the fun and which ones decrease it, and why. He went into statistics, which is a little over my head, although he did a really good job of bringing it down to earth for folks in the audience who don't have a maths background. But a lot of it was just really good insight on why we find certain gameplay elements exciting and how almost every game out there, yeah, you can note exceptions, but almost every game out there does use some form of randomness. And even a lot of people who say they hate randomness in games, some of their favorite games have randomness in them deployed in a way that, for whatever reason, feels hidden to the player.
I mean, chess has randomness because you have to randomly decide who goes first.
Well, yeah, and that was actually covered. One person in the audience tried to claim that not knowing what the other player was going to do was a form of randomness, and James Ernest cut that off at the knees. But randomizing who goes first is potentially part of it. Some people don't do it that way with chess, but if you randomize it, that does have a real impact on the game, even while the rest of the game remains more or less deterministic. But it got my RPG head thinking about what do dice and cards and so forth bring to that style of game. And in the case of RPGs, I have long contended, because people have tried to argue that randomness shouldn't be there. It should be a pure storytelling experience. And there's room for a pure storytelling experience, but I would argue, and now I have a little more ammunition for it, that surprise is the reason you have randomness in an RPG. There are better and worse ways to deploy that. A simple D20 roll, for example, actually is not great, in my opinion and experience, and just statistically, it doesn't help much, because usually there's a fixed chance you're going to succeed or fail, and so the level of surprise is not necessarily particularly high. But properly deployed, dice mechanics in RPGs allow both the players and the GM to be surprised and to have to react and respond dynamically to things they could not have planned for.
And that's a great example too. I would imagine that seminar was geared more towards designers, right?
Yeah.
And I know you and I have talked about this previously, Chandra. Neither of us really has any interest in designing a game for whatever reason.
Yeah, not currently anyway. We'll see.
Yeah. So why were you there as a retailer?
Insight. I was there as a retailer, I mean, partly because I saw the man's name on it, and didn't want to pass up hearing some of his thoughts on game design. This person that has been influencing my gaming life since I was a teenager. But there's also the point that as retailers, we don't often get to dig down into design with designers. It's not necessarily professionally enriching, although maybe it will be in a way that I can't currently predict, but it is personally enriching as a person who plays games, as a person who is passionate about games, and as a person who wants to impart that passion on others, to have a smarter way of talking about game mechanics with people.
And I'm actually going to disagree with you. I think it is professionally enriching, just in the sense of how many times are you already bringing up this seminar with customers?
Right.
Right. We, going back to being on the front line of the games industry, our customers expect that we have some kind of insider knowledge, which obviously we do about a lot of things, but being able to be like, hey, I went to this seminar with James Ernest and learned some things. That is, yes, it's name dropping. It's also street cred. It, like you said, it enriches you. It also enriches our customers to understand that, having these conversations about how randomness works in games. And I know there was a lot more, we've spoken, off of the pod a little bit about some of the other things that you learned in that seminar, which would take an entire hour to go over. But I think, branching out when you go to something like Expo, maybe not your first year. If you're a retailer, look, go to retailer stuff. You're going to learn so much.
Yeah.
But, once you have the freedom to sit in on a panel of stuff that you're not interested in, because A, you might get interested in it, and B, you're going to learn something.
Well, what you just did there speaks to that very same seminar, The Aesthetics of Randomness. You took some information and you wove it into a story. And that was actually a big part of what he was talking about. What is the aesthetics of randomness? Well, we are story-making creatures. And so the randomness we are handed, we weave into a narrative structure. Just by nature, it's how our minds work. And he showed on a graph, he played craps the night before at a nearby casino, and he graphed out his wins and losses. He graphed out how much money he put down, what he won, what he subsequently lost, and then how he was able to bring it back up to more or less even before he cut and ran. And he showed how you can tell a story with this.
Hmm.
You have the initial rising action of, doing really well, winning a bunch of money on dice rolls out of the gate, and then losing it all, going well into the negatives for a while. That's your real challenge. That's your adversity. And then fighting back up from being in the hole. That's the story we tell ourselves about what happened. We were actually only rolling dice and hoping for the best the whole time. And that's the aesthetics of randomness. And it's, games incorporate randomness in ways that get us to tell stories. But any game we play, no matter how much or little randomness is in it, we enjoy it to the extent that we can tell a story out of the experience.
It reminds me of a kind of a thought experiment joke I hear about board games, and this could apply to RPGs as well. Although with board games, it has more of a outside observer point, which is, imagine aliens observing human beings from afar and having this anthropological debate over this strange practice where sometimes they will like open up a box of stuff collectively and spend 1 to 2 hours rearranging the stuff in the box. Like they bring it all out on the table and they spend a couple of hours very meticulously organizing it and then putting it back in the box. That's strange. And what those alien anthropologists don't realize is the story that's happening in the process of, what we're doing is moving some pieces around
Yep.
in a pattern,
Yep.
but in a way that doesn't seem to make sense if you're not familiar with the story behind it.
Yep.
I want to quickly talk about another thing that happens at Expo. Every night there's a demo nights.
Yeah.
Publishers have some tables and they're setting up some of their games. Now we've talked about how, for us anyway, we're very much in the know. I'm the primary buyer of new board games. You are the primary buyer of new RPGs. We keep track of what's coming down the pipe. And we make gut level decisions often because we get so many solicitations. Does this look good? Should I research this a little bit more? Sometimes it's, I know that designer, let's definitely bring in that game or whatever. So what purpose does the demo hall serve in a situation where, obviously there might be some games there that we hadn't seen yet that they're just, exposing for the first time. But a lot of times this is stuff that's come across my field of view that I might have accepted or rejected already. What purpose does the demo hall serve for retailers?
For retailers, getting hands-on is way different from reading a sales sheet about it or something like that. Being able to, see it in action, actually get your hands on it, play through the game, that's how you build genuine enthusiasm. It's also how we as retailers start thinking about who is the audience for this. Because so many times we play a game that might not do a lot for us personally, but our retailer brains go to work and we come up with, okay, well, it's not for me. Who's it for?
And is that person a customer of ours?
Is that person a customer of ours? And, is this one of the better things that slots into that position? Are there other games that do a similar thing that we are more enthused about, or does this one beat those out? And hey, I really want to get this into the hands of this guy who's always buying games for he and his family to play, and this would be perfect for them.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. Also, and this is a two-way thing, designers and publishers solicit our feedback.
True.
And, sometimes the game they bring to the demo hall is not a totally finished package. It's most of the way there. There's a good prototype for it, but they're still looking for ways that it can be improved. And, I had someone from the op, for example, ask us after showing us an upcoming game and playing us through a few rounds, not just did you like it, but what were your specific thoughts? What worked? What didn't? Can you think of ways to make stuff work that didn't work? Stuff like that. So it's obviously helping the publisher to tweak
Yeah.
a game. It's also helping us to have some impact on the quality of the games that are entering the
Yeah.
marketplace.
That's true. I hadn't thought about the two-way street that does happen a lot of times in the demo halls. I think for me, it's, for lack of a better phrase, the speed dating element is
Yeah.
very impactful. Because the thing is, when we see a solicitation, we get an email, this game's coming out. Okay. There's just a gut level. Does it look good? Does it not look good? Because we bring in so much stuff here at Games Unlimited, I can't spend the time, oh, let me do 10 minutes. Let me go download a rule book. Let me watch a review. Like, I don't have time for that. It's
Yeah.
very much gut level because that stuff's going to take a lot of work on my end. For me to read a rule book, that's a lot of time.
Yeah.
Um, so to be able to just walk up to a table, either shoulder surf the group that's playing it, or get the quick 2-minute pitch, or maybe I sit down and play a round or two. That it's going to be much faster for me to be taught by someone a couple of rounds of the game than for me to read the rule book and teach someone else a couple of rounds of the game. So it does highlight things that we may have passed on before. And I'll be honest, sometimes I just like that game looks cool. I want to sit down and play it. Right?
Yeah.
It's an opportunity after a long day, meeting with publishers, walking
Mhm.
around the exhibit hall to just relax and unwind and actually play a game.
Yeah. We kind of get to just be gamers for that time in the evening because we're having to be business people the
Mhm.
whole day long. Um, so yeah, I hadn't even consciously thought of that element, but it's true. It's kind of like the times here in the store when we get to take a little bit of a breather from doing store stuff, and 3 or 4 of us, will just gather around the demo bar and learn a new game together or play a favorite just because we have a few minutes to kill in the middle of a slow day, and that's what we feel like doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's like that at the expo, but then you still get to take notes away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Were there any big, outstanding, something big highlight for you game wise, maybe that wasn't on your radar that you saw at Expo and you said, oh, that one, we're bringing that in?
I'm gonna say it's probably there's one game that hit all of us. So I've got to go ahead and say Hummingbirds.
Stole mine.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna say. I mean, I think at least 3 of the 4 of us who went were gonna say Hummingbirds to that question. Um, but I'll let you go into Hummingbirds because I also want to bring up, since Dan M is not here, he was particularly excited about oh, what was that?
Familiar finds.
Familiar Finds. Thank you. Yeah. He was particularly excited about Familiar Finds, and it was really amusing. He did not know. He played Familiar Finds, and
This is coming from Darrington Press.
yeah,
And I think its theming is there's some sort of critical role, maybe relationship.
I think there might be, but in any case, it is the familiars of spellcasters, of magic users, all sorts of like weird fantasy critters. But it is a card game, a very, very sort of fast moving card game, but with some real depth to it, with some real gameplay interest. Great art, which, I think we expect from Darrington. Um, but Dan M, the other manager, was really taken by this game, and it is a good game. What's funny is he did not know when he played it and got excited about it that the designer of this game is Ian Zhang, who used to work for Games Unlimited years and years ago. And we've watched him put out a few different games over the years. And I would go so far as to say I think this is his most interesting game design that I have seen yet.
Okay.
Genuinely really cool card game. And on Dan M's behalf, I had to bring it up because I genuinely think it's a worthy game. I'm excited to bring it in, and it's cool that it has that extra little bit of Games Unlimited tie-in.
Yep. Ian, if you're listening, good job. I haven't played it yet myself, but based on Dan M's recommendation, we upped our pre-orders for it.
Yep.
Excited to get it in.
Yeah, and again, very cool. He had no clue what that connection was. Dan had no clue what that connection was. And when we told him, he was like, "Wait, really?"
Yeah, I'm trying to. I asked at the Darrington booth if Ian was at the show, but he wasn't because I don't know if I've seen him since before the pandemic. I feel like he stopped into the new location once a few years ago.
Yes, I recall him being here kind of early on in our time at this location.
So that's very cool. Look forward to that one. But yeah, Chandra, as you mentioned, Hummingbirds, standout hit. This was new one from the op, was not on our radar. Sand timer game. Might raise eyebrows, but it's doing something different that we hadn't seen with sand timers, which is the sand timers are flipped over and placed in kind of like a sleeve or a you can't see the time.
Yeah, it's a 3D board that's meant to look like flower stalks, basically.
Yep. And you're placing your little hummingbirds. They're magnetic, and the sand timers have some metal on either end. So you place a hummingbird on it to claim it as yours. And you have 2 hummingbirds. When your next turn comes around, you can place another hummingbird, or you can lift up the timer because you hope it has run out.
Yes.
And there's 30-second timers, 1 minute, and based on the height and the color, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute, there's a 10-minute timer.
Yeah.
But your whole hope is lift up your hummingbird and all the nectar's been drained, the time has run out.
It's the inverse of a lot of sand timer based games, where you're not trying to get something done before the timer runs out or to flip the timer before it runs out, as in something like Kites. Instead, you want the timer to run out while your hummingbird is sitting on top of it, but you can't see it. It's hidden from you, so you have to try to keep in your head how much sand you think any given timer still has on it. Most interesting thing about the game to me is that it is designed such that you have to be okay with failing.
Yes.
You have to make sure you have a few small scoring tokens that you can willingly sacrifice.
Because if you lift up a timer and the sand hasn't completely emptied, you lose one of your scoring tokens.
And it's any one scoring token. So obviously you're going to toss out your lowest scoring token. So you want to have a bunch of ones hanging around that you don't care about flicking to the side in order to buffer your bigger scoring tokens.
And that's where the layer of interaction comes in, because if I do lift up that timer and it's not done, I'm going to lose a scoring token. I'm also going to take my hummingbird off, but the timer continues running.
Which means on my turn, I can put my hummingbird on it in the hopes of being able to claim that, being able to essentially steal it from you.
But of course, you could only do that if you have one of your 2 hummingbirds in hand.
Yes. Which means I either just scored or just failed.
Yeah. So it's fantastic. Amazing table presence. We just got it in this week.
Yep.
So it's out on the demo bar. I think already the feedback has been great on it.
Yeah.
We brought in a lot of it. I'm excited about it.
Makes a shockingly good 2-player game. I have to say the dynamic is so different from playing at higher player counts. It handles all available player counts really well, but at a 2-player game, it is so tense. It is incredibly tense as a 2-player game.
I've got to try that. And last thing with all the gushing, I expected this to be $40, maybe $45. It's a $30 game.
Yeah.
Like, it is in a nice, sweet spot. Given the table presence of it, it looks like it would be more.
Mm-hmm.
So kudos to the op for this game. We were taught it by the designer. I think this and Tacta are his first 2 games. We also brought in Tacta, a little card. So, yeah, game of the show.
Oh, for sure.
Bar none.
For sure.
Just before we wrap up and talk about what we've been playing, which we like to do at the end of every episode, what was your biggest takeaway this year? This is your 3rd year at GAMA. Did you have one big highlight, big takeaway? What was the feel of GAMA Expo? This is our last year in Louisville.
Yes.
It's moving to Baltimore for
Yeah.
the next, I want to say, 5 years.
Yep. My big takeaway, um, this is going to sound schmaltzy, but gaming is all about the people. My first 2 years going to the expo, I was learning a lot. I was going to all sorts of different seminars and learning philosophical points and approaches to business and all of that stuff. I was learning about games and making some initial connections. But this third year, a lot of those connections have been made. And I was struck by how much what excited me this year was getting to see certain people,
Mm, mhm.
getting to stand around and have conversations with Zach from Soul Muppet, getting to stand around and talk to frankly everyone from Rowan Rook and Descartes, from Critical Kit, from Plus One XP. These are the real highlights to me, getting to talk to some of the other retailers that we know from around the country, getting to hug Dawn. That's what makes these really worthwhile at the end of it. I mean, yeah, we get a lot of business stuff out of it, and we get business stuff out of those personal relationships. But the fact that we have these relationships that are based around this one event is actually a pretty special thing. I know a lot of people get that around conventions too, where they
Absolutely.
have groups of friends that they see at conventions every year. Similar thing, just industry facing in this instance. That was my real takeaway. Like that's the treasure of this industry. That's the treasure of gaming as a whole. It's the people. It's why I would rather play, you know, Mario Kart 64 over a, single player racing game. Same thing with tabletop gaming. I want to be with people. I want to learn from and about people from all over the place. From all over this country, all over the world. That's my big takeaway from Gamma is the opportunities we get for that.
And I'm going to throw out there with that what you're talking about is also something that goes under the heading of networking.
Yeah.
And I say that because a lot of us think of networking as a dirty word, as this business term, as a very false, oh, I'm just trying to give people my business card, give them my elevator pitch, etc.
Yep.
And there is some of that involved in networking, but so much more of it is exactly what you said, Chandra. These real relationships we're making with people. Because when you go up to the Soul Muppet booth, yeah, we're still in business relationship with each other. Still want to see what you've got coming out.
Yeah.
But I also want to ask how you are. Genuinely. I
Yeah.
want to ask what you've been playing. What's been exciting to you?
Yep.
So when you hear, because you're going to hear a lot, oh, go to Gamma for the networking. It's very true, and it's not as hollow and shallow as that word has come to make it seem like it is.
Yeah. Networking in this instance really is just human connection.
I mean, you were getting a little schmaltzy. I might be getting a little schmaltzy too, as far as my biggest takeaway. I'm going to be perfectly honest. Going into Gamma this year, and I actually even told some people on this. We had dinner with another retailer, friend of mine, Monday night, I think it was. And I was saying to him, like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go to Gamma next year. I'm feeling a little burnt out.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm hitting a midlife crisis, and I've just got other things I want to be doing besides focusing all the time on games. Um, and the reason why I wasn't going to give a seminar this year was an overwhelming feeling that I've been having since last Gamma that I'm not actually making a difference
Mm.
to the wider industry. I definitely know we're making a difference right here in Games Unlimited. We see customers day in and day out. But I've always, well, not always, but for the past few years, really wanted to make a difference to the wider industry. We talked about Gamma as a trade industry organization with a board of directors. I have been on Gamma's board of directors in the past. A lot of people may not know I was actually president of the GAMA board of directors.
We here at Games Unlimited remember that time without fondness.
um, all of which was just in service of me saying, look, I want to be able to make a difference. GAMA has helped me so much. How can I help make GAMA better? And GAMA's doing great things, but like any organization made up of thousands of members, it's got its flaws, it's got its politics, and that's what ultimately drove me away from wanting to be in leadership in that form. Um, but so there was a little burnout from that of like I just want to help, and the politicking is getting in the way of helping. But also just feeling like I give these seminars and I don't get a lot of feedback. I want to show people how we do things. This is how we do used games. This is how we do board games in general. And I think part of me had been hoping to see more of like stores adopting more of a Games Unlimited model towards more of the board game side of things, towards more of the RPG side of things. And, in absence of seeing real feedback from that, I was just feeling, I don't know that this matters. So, but I decided to give this seminar about the mindset, the alchemy seminar. But it was sort of like, this is going to be my last hurrah for a while. And from day one, I had retailers coming up to me saying one of two things, if not both. I had retailers come up to me and say, I attended your used game seminar last year, and I've adopted it whole cloth, and it's going amazing. I had at least a half a dozen retailers give me that direct.
Yeah.
And I had so many retailers come up to me. I watch all your social media stuff. Because on our social media, I talk about games, I talk about what's new at the store, Chandra talks about RPGs, but I also do a lot of pull back the curtain. Here's what's going on in the industry. Here's how we do things as a store. And just having retailers say, you have not only inspired us, you've given us tips and ways that we have changed our store. I had a retailer come up to me, Chandra, that attended your indie RPG seminar last year.
Oh, cool.
And said, what did they say? That seminar has made us like $20,000.
Yeah.
And so just being able to get the feedback and say, no, you are helping the industry was really heartwarming and really just, okay, yes, maybe my purpose is not, being in leadership at GAMA, being up there, doing the hard work. It is hard work, behind the scenes work. It is drudge work to help a trade organization flourish and help its members flourish. As much as I thought maybe that was where I needed to be. I think I am right where I need to be with all the stuff we've been doing. So that was my biggest takeaway of just, okay, look, I'm doing something. We're doing something, not just for our local community, but we're making game stores better, which is going to make more gamers in the long run.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's again, that goes to the human connection part. Even if you don't know those people individually, even if you'll never see or speak to any one of them again, to know that some interaction that you had with them was of real lasting benefit. There's really nothing better than that. Nothing.
All right. That's going to put a pin on GAMA Expo 2026.
Yep.
Next year it'll be in Baltimore. I think I'll go.
Yeah. I think if we can get the same crew to go to at least the first one in Baltimore, so that we can feel the difference. Yeah.
Slightly shorter drive for us as well.
Yep.
Let's end up like we always like to end up.
Fewer White Castles.
I don't know. Is the White Castle not in Baltimore? I don't know where their purview is.
Midwest mostly.
Okay. Chandra, is there something you've been playing recently that you've been enjoying besides Hummingbirds?
Adrenaline.
Oh, what is that? No one's ever heard of that game.
Yeah. An old favorite that we joke all the time. This is on our short list of games we absolutely love that we cannot get people to play. It is aesthetically a first-person shooter game inspired by early 2000s first-person shooters. If you know that world, you know Unreal Tournament, you know Quake. That is the inspiration aesthetically. You are running around a map of rooms, picking up weapons and ammo, and shooting each other. However, what makes this game stand out, gameplay-wise, Stick with me here. Gameplay wise, it is a Euro style territory control game.
What?
Yeah, it is a territory control game in which the territories are the other players. You put damage on them, and the damage is essentially your attempt to get majority control of that territory. When a player dies, they immediately respawn. They don't lose anything for dying in the game. So you never really feel victimized in that game. It's not frustrating in the way that that style of game sounds like it might be. You immediately pop back up, but everyone who had put damage on you scores points according to how much damage they had put on you, who had done the most, who had done second most, etc. Bonus points if you got the kill shot, bonus points if you did an overkill, meaning you did more damage than necessary to kill them. But at the end of it, it's really just who had majority control when that territory is scored. Which sounds weird, but I am telling you, if you have not played Adrenaline,
So good.
get 4 friends together and play you some Adrenaline. You will not be sorry. It is a brilliant, clever game. That's Czech Games, right?
It is CGE, yes,
Yeah.
from, gosh, close to 10 years ago. I'm
Yeah,
gonna say.
and it still holds up. We,
Yeah.
pulled out a copy last week, I think. Taught it to someone who'd never played it before. Had a great 5-person game of Adrenaline. Everyone had a phenomenal time.
Yeah.
It's one of those games you're having fun, win or lose,
Yeah.
because it's just so weird and unique, and something's always happening.
And just so many cool weapons that like do ricochets, and there's flamethrowers and this.
Yep.
Oh.
And they
it's
actually
so good.
behave differently. They allow you to spread your influence out in a variety of interesting ways.
Yeah, that's a great game. I myself played for the first time Zoo Vadis. This is a Reiner Knizia game. So we do an older Reiner Knizia game. I mean, Dr. Knizia has such a huge catalog of games.
Yep.
And has kind of been seeing a moment again. We have seen so many publishers both republishing older games with new themes, as well as he's putting out new stuff. I
Yep.
played in the demo hall, actually, one of his greats from the 90s, a game called Samurai.
Mm-hmm.
He's coming back from Keymaster with a new theme on it that's more about like cherry blossoms, and it's really cool. And so, yeah, Reiner Knizia is really, we're seeing so much of his stuff coming out. But Zoo Vadis I had never played. I'd never played Quo Vadis. And this is a negotiation game. Like most of Knizia's designs, very simple. You've got a board, you're placing your pieces at the bottom of the board, trying to move them up. There's different tracks that you move up to get to the top, because you have to get a piece to the top in order to be eligible to win the game.
Mhm.
If you don't get a piece to the top, doesn't matter how many points you've got. So that's the primary thing people are doing. And depending on player count, there may be, like we were playing a 5-player game, and there are 5 spaces on the top. But of course, one person could get multiple pieces to the top. And there are like neutral NPC pieces that could get to the top. So blocking off so that not everyone can even score. But the other thing is to move up to spots. Like, let's say I'm on a spot that has 3 spaces on it. If there's three spots in this place, in order to move, I need a majority of votes from people who are in that spot to move up. So if it's a 3 spot, I need 2 votes yes to allow me to move up. Now, obviously, if I've got 2 people in there, I'm just going to vote for myself 2 yeses and move 1 up. But most of the time, you're going to need the other players to say, yes, I'll let you vote. I'll let you move up. Now, when you give someone your yes vote, you get a point. So there's an inherent incentive to do that, to say yes. But most of the time you're saying, well, what do you give me if I give you my vote? Or what do you give me in the future? Or that sort of thing. So a lot of wheeling and dealing. And something really cool that I hadn't seen before. So this version, I think the original didn't have it, has asymmetrical player powers. So every player has something unique that they can do, except you may not use your player power on yourself. Those player powers exist as negotiation incentives. So maybe I have the power, I mentioned, a spot may only be able to hold 3 people. Well, you can't move up to a spot if there's already 3 people in it. But I might have the player power that allows you to move up and overcrowd the spot. I can't use it on myself, but I can say, hey, Chandra, it's your turn. You want to move up? I will use my special power to let you move up. But what are you going to give me for it? So really cool, pretty fast playing game, under an hour. I want to play more of it. I really liked Zuvada.
Very cool. That one sounds like one I would really like to get to the table. It's interesting that we're both kind of reaching back for the games that we're playing. Deep cuts, as it were.
Well, that's just because we didn't have hummingbirds last week.
Right.
But yeah, there's just, I mean, there's so many games out there.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just want an oldie but a goodie.
For sure.
Even if it wasn't an oldie you hadn't played, but now you know he's a goodie.
Yep. Play Adrenaline.
All right. Well, that's going to do us for this overly long podcast. But, GAMA itself was 4 long days. But hopefully you learned a little something. And if you took nothing away from this, go to GAMA. If you're in the industry, go to GAMA Expo, they like to call it.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm Kylie at Games Unlimited signing off.
And I'm Chandra at Games Unlimited, also signing off.
Go unbox some fun.
Throw some cards, roll dice.
And unbox fun.
Have fun.
And roll dice.
Throw cards.